Hey everyone, welcome to the if statements video, part of the loop series where I'll discuss the different types of fundamental loops used in most programming languages. Like I said, this video is about the if statement. Now, this loop exists in basically every programming language ever, as it's one of the first things a novice programmer encounters. Here, we'll cover what it is and go over some examples. The if statement allows you to branch execution, meaning you can tell your program to do one of two things depending on the state of the program. It's best to describe this through example, so let's take a look at one now. So let's say you find yourself at the annual Blue Car Society meetup. It's oddly specific, I know, but it's great for this example. Now, they have a rule that if you come in with a blue car, your entry fee of $100 is waived. But that said, if you drive in on anything else, you still have to pay that fee. So let's say you drive in on your orange car, and let's see what the if statement sees. There are one of two options here, either the $100 entry for anything non-blue, or a blue car and free entry. So based off the color of the car, this branch is chosen and you must pay the fee. Note also that the execution was branched. Since the program chose to execute the left side branch, it will not also execute the right branch for you as well. This also poses an interesting question, and that's what happens when you have more than just these two options. Well, let's take a look at something where there's multiple options and see how the if statement deals with it. So this next example will be about how some big stores might organize a rewards program. Let's say they have different membership levels like gold, red, blue, but you could also have no membership and still shop there. But when you check out, based on your membership level, the store might also charge you a fee that's added to the bottom of your receipt, as shown over here on this green guide. From the perspective of the if statement, let's see how this fee variable is assigned. If the user is gold, then set the fee to 0. If the user is red, then set the fee to 5, and so on and so forth. In the code that follows this, we'll be able to take the same fee variable and add it to the total cost, and this lets us choose how to assign the fee variable. Hey guys, and welcome to the coding view. Now over here we're going to start with describing our setup. So over here on the right hand side, this is going to be our main Python file. We're going to write everything in here and then we're going to execute it on the terminal window over here. So we're going to use this command which clears our screen and then it'll run our file. So right now if I run it, nothing's going to happen. If I were to say, hello world and save it, and I were to re-execute it, you see over here I'll say hello world now. Because of that clear command, the last run will always be cleared, so we'll just see the latest one. So now let's just start with some of these examples. Alright, so since we're talking about if statements here, we're going to have some kind of conditional value. We're going to see this again in the form of if, conditional, and then we're going to do something. We could also have an else statement and say else, do something else. So let's just start with some kind of example of this. I'm going to define myself a boolean, and we're just going to call this can pigs fly? And of course, we're going to start with false. So then if we were to go ahead and rerun this, we're going to see nothing because we're not really doing anything. We just assign a variable and the program ends. So let's go ahead and do something with this. Let's say if can pigs fly? So if pigs can fly, what are we going to do? We're going to say they sure can. Now, what do you think is going to happen? Pause this and take a look at this. What do you think is going to happen when we run this? What's going to be the output? So the output was actually going to be nothing because we say can pigs fly is false, and if can pigs fly, then we print this. What this is trying to say is if this is true, then do this. So I'm going to go ahead and prove that. Nothing happened. This line right here, it's typically written like this. You could also rewrite it to be like this. These are equivalent statements right here. So can pigs fly is true? Well, it's not because it's false, so we don't run this. But let's go ahead and let's just change this now. In terms of, let's add an else. So an else statement means if this doesn't run, whatever is in this section in between the if and the else, if this doesn't run, then do this stuff. And we're going to say, no, they can't. So if I were to rerun this, which line do you think is going to get executed? It's going to be the second one. So I'm going to run this, and it says, no, they can't. That's because the program would come in here, it would set this to false. If this is true, well, it's not true, so I don't even need to look at this. What's the next thing say? Else. So else, I'll print this. And of course, if we were to just change this to true, then the opposite behavior is expected. We expect to see this line being printed out. And of course, that's what we see over here. All right, so now we're going to go over an example which has a conditional value, but it doesn't just use a Boolean. So I looked this up, and there are 350 different types of pasta in the world. So what we're going to do, we have this piece of knowledge, but let's just say we didn't, and we were going to take some sort of user input or something else for that. But since in this case we're not going to take in any user input, I'm just going to go ahead and hard code it in there. Now let's say, based off of whatever this is, we want to take some kind of action. So we're going to start with seeing if maybe it's a little bit higher or lower than what it actually is, and show you what an if and else are. So I'm going to do if types of pasta is equal to, let's say, 400. And you notice I'm using a single equals here and a double equals here. Equals means take whatever is here and set it here. The double equal means check if the two things on the left and right are equal. So the first one's more of a do this, and the second one, this is kind of more of a question, are these equal? And this equal sign means this is equal to this. So if it's 400, which we know it to be wrong, but we're just going to go ahead and say there are 400 types of pasta. Now let's say instead of just having an if and an else, I want an intermediate. I want another option in there. Well, that's also possible to do. It's called else if. But in Python, it's actually shortened. They just go ahead and take this stuff and remove it and put it together as one word. So we're going to say else if, and we had to say what it's here. Types of pasta is, oh, I don't know, 9001. Then we'll say there are 9001 types of pasta. And of course, the final thing, else, we want to say how many types of pasta there are else. So this is just an example of if it doesn't hit the first block or your intermediate block, then everything will go to your else. So a quick tip actually is over here, we type the number of pasta that's also used in the conditional check. Now, that can get really tedious if you want to do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and you have to keep doing a bunch of different numbers. So instead, you can actually use the variable name or the value of the variable in your print statement. The way to do that is to say print the real types of pasta in the world are, and then you type these curly braces. What the curly braces mean are, in this space, I want you to enter in this variable. Now, where do you type that variable is after your quotation mark, you type .format types of pasta. So now if we run this, it'll say the real types of pasta in the world are, oh, I need a variable. There's my variable. So I'm going to go ahead and run this. So before I do that again, please pause and tell me what you think will be the actual value. What is going to be printed? Okay, so what's going to be printed is actually this final else block. We see it's 350. It's not 400. It's not 9001. We're going to hit the else block. We'll say the real types of pasta in the world are, and type it like this. The real types of pasta in the world are 350. So we just took this variable, we put it in here, and that's the result of running through this block over here of code.